Hello and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. Joining me in the studio is Senior Manager Lisa Watson of the consulting company Deloitte. Lisa, thanks very much for coming into the studio today.
It's a pleasure, thank you.
Now, Deloitte, I know, deal with various tax and audit related services here in Switzerland. You've recently carried out a study looking at listed companies in Switzerland. Can you tell me a little bit about this study, please?
Yes, so Deloitte has recently issued a new study looking at corporate governance, in particular studying the corporate governance disclosures of Swiss listed companies, in particular looking at the top 50 equities on the Swiss Stock Exchange. We looked into various aspects of corporate governance disclosures by analysing the publicly available information that we find in annual reports, as well as looking on company websites. We focused on looking at the board of directors, the composition and the working methods of the board of directors and its subcommittees. We also looked into some specific focus areas such as the evaluation of board performance and risk oversight. We also looked at the so-called hot topics such as diversity, in particular gender diversity and the representation of women on the board.
What was your main focus on this study? Why did you carry out the study and what were your findings?
The aim of the study was to compare listed companies, to examine the level of disclosure that they're making publicly available, and to benchmark Swiss companies with European neighbouring countries and US companies as well, just to see if Swiss companies are ahead of or are lagging behind counterparts.
Were they?
In some areas they are providing very transparent, detailed information. In other areas, and I will go into detail in a moment, they are appearing to be lagging behind.
You mentioned those specific areas. Would you mind telling me what those specific areas were?
Looking at gender diversity, we'd see that in Switzerland the number of women making it into senior positions and director roles is actually lower than in Europe. So this is one area where Switzerland does appear to be lagging behind. In Switzerland there are currently no quotas for appointing women to board positions, compared to in Europe. A lot of European countries have introduced quotas, which is increasing the number of women on the board over the last few years. This is not yet happening in Switzerland.
As far as listed companies are concerned, what potential hazards or issues, if you were a listed company, as well as what you found in the study, would you be looking for in 2013? What are some of the key things that, after you've done the study, if we're looking ahead now, these listed companies, what would they be looking to this year?
On the horizon in 2013, we have the Swiss citizens will vote on the Minder initiative. This will take place in March of this year. The Minder initiative will have quite significant consequences for Swiss listed companies in terms of mandatory shareholder votes on remuneration levels within the company, and also the elimination of certain practices such as golden parachutes. If the Minder initiative isn't successful, then there is a Swiss indirect counter-proposal which will also lead to significant changes for Swiss companies.
What are golden parachutes exactly?
So that means when a director is leaving the company, they will receive a large package, a large payment, and that will be prohibited going forward.
This whole study was presumably to look at transparency amongst these listed companies. Do you feel that the study overall has provided more information for you and for the companies as far as transparency is concerned?
Yes, I mean the overall aim of our study was to look at the level of transparency within Swiss companies. While we do see that Swiss companies are complying with the legal regulations, we do note that compared to other practices, other best practices that we see elsewhere in the world, the level of disclosure by Swiss companies could be enhanced. For example, if we look at disclosures on succession planning, performance evaluation of the board, and risk oversight, where in Switzerland there are no mandatory disclosure requirements compared to in other countries where there are mandatory requirements. The level of information is so concise in Swiss annual reports that it's very difficult to get a feeling for the level of focus given on these topics by the board members.
Lisa, thank you very much for coming into the studio today.
Thank you.
That's all we've got for the moment here on Dukascopy TV. Stay with us though throughout the day. We'll be able to bring you further updates and interviews. But for now, goodbye.